Well, hello and welcome back to the Pendle Suite. We're kind of sort of midpoint of the whole ComCon experience, aren't we? Very exciting. Anyway, I'm glad you made it back. We've got something very exciting for you now, a big treat. I was just speaking with Dave, and he was at the very first ComCon when he was talking about Dractio, and it's before, now is it jambonz or jambonz?
As Dave said, I was here in, I don't know if it was 2019 or 2018. In my mind, it was 2019, talking about an open source project of mine called Dractio. It was 2018, okay. Sorry, well, and now I'm back to talk about jambonz. So it feels like a little bit full circle, a little bit something new. It's great. And I was here in 2019. I don't know what I was doing, probably just drinking in the bar since I wasn't giving that talk. And so because those two things are sandwiched around COVID, for me, this also feels like kind of the end of COVID, the final sort of return to normalcy to see all of you guys that I saw in 2018 and 2019. Mira, in her great talk, talked about how she was a fan of Dave Duffett, and I am as well. For those who don't know, Dave teaches a really great class called Let the Geeks Speak that's meant to give engineers a voice within organizations, and you should really look at it if you haven't. It's a really career-changing thing for an engineer to find that voice, and it's impactful for companies to have the voice of engineers being heard. I mention that because I'm a big adherent, but my retention is not that good, so I need to retake that class like every year. Dave's got it boiled down to like a series of acronym, or an acronym that makes it pretty simple, but I seem to have forgotten everything except the very first letter in the acronym, which is P. I know it's P. And its purpose, wait, no, it's not, it's prepare. But the prepare P ship has sailed, so we're gonna hang on purpose. So what I want to do today, I feel like it's probably a mixed audience. Some of you don't know much about jambonz, maybe have an idle curiosity. Maybe you saw the talk yesterday that use jambonz. Maybe you're just here because these chairs are more comfortable than the ones in the other ones. But you're in the right place. These are the more comfortable chairs. But this is for you, and you will get kind of a soup to nuts sort of overview of jambonz with kind of a set of breadcrumbs that you can follow if you find that it may be for you and you want to do it when you go home. Some of you are more familiar with jambonz. I was thinking about this before. It blows my mind. I think there's 5 people, maybe 6, who are actually contributors to jambonz in the room, which amazes me. As hard as it is to get an open source project off the ground, getting contributors is 10 times harder. So I feel blessed that many of you have decided to contribute, and it's been fantastic. But either way, what we're going to do is kind of give you soup to nuts on jambonz with attention towards building applications, and within that, some special attention to building voicebots. And my last goal is to try to dial down the intimidation factor a little bit. I'll talk about that in a second. Normally, I would now do an intro, give you a little background on me and jambonz, and you will get that intro, but you will get it in a couple minutes. I want to just do something first. With your indulgence, we'll just spin up a jambonz server on AWS. Takes about 2 minutes. And then while it's kind of baking in AWS world, I'll give you the intro, if that's okay. The reason that I want to do it is a lot of times I go to talks and someone stands up there and they go through a great demo, and it looks really easy, but I always wonder, well, what did it take to get things set up? Because do I need to go home and spend a day, God forbid, reading documentation or reaching out for help and feeling like an idiot and so forth? So I wanted to take us through just spinning up a quick jambonz system that hopefully you'll see, if you want to do this, it's not that difficult. So let me do that, and then we'll come back, do a little intro. Let me put on my little goofy glasses here. So if you did want to do this at home, the starting point would just be to go to the jambonz website, and here there's a simple link that talks about spinning something up on AWS. We do have a hosted service as well, jambonz.us or jambonz.xyz. The only reason I prefer this is those hosted systems tend to be a little bit out of date, and it's pretty easy to spin up your own system. If you click that, you get to a blog that actually walks you through it step by step, and I won't do that. But in the blog, there's a log post, and or a link, rather, and it just takes you to AWS. There's a cloud formation. I'm going to use the same process, I'm going to use my own cloud formation because I just want to use a newer AMI that has some newer features that haven't been released yet. So just bear with me here as I find that. Cloud formation. Okay, so this would be the same. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to do that. See if we can go back. This would be the same thing you'd see if. Oh, sorry, I've got to do that. Looks like I got to do that again. If you had gone through the marketplace offering. So there's a couple parameters that are all pretty straightforward. On AWS, they don't want you really opening things to the world unless you explicitly say so. So we have HTTP traffic coming in because we have a portal. Most often, you do sort of want to let this stuff come in. So I'm going to go ahead and say that HTTP, RTP, SIP, I guess you can see that. SSH, you may want to lock down. I'm not going to. We send logs to CloudWatch. Which is great for debugging purposes, and you can specify the number of days. By default, I'll just leave it at 3 days, and then I'll pick an instance type. I'm going to go with the T3 medium, and I'll pick a key pair that I've got, and I can take the default VPC CDR, and then we're basically done. I'll give it a name just so I know what it is when I look at it. And we are creating an IAM user because of the CloudWatch, so I just have to acknowledge that and then submit. Okay, so that is that. That's going to spin up. It's going to create an instance. It's going to create a VPC in its own VPC and all the stuff you need to do that. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Now, did I actually? One sec. Let me just. Oh, nuts. I did one thing wrong. I want to give it a portal name, so I'm actually going to delete that. Oh, that's annoying, sorry. Let me create a new stack, so redo that. Yeah, it is. Everything's in the jambonz repos on GitHub under the MIT license. The thing I forgot to do last time is I wanted to come up under this DNS name, jambonz.cloud.
Okay, before you carry on,
yeah.
there's a double L, whether it's important, but if you go back to the top.
Your name, yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know if, oh, whoops, there we go. I'm just going to leave that. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right, so we're going to let that sort of go for a little bit, and now let me give you a little bit better of an introduction. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I love hearing the origin stories about companies and about open source projects, probably more about open source projects than companies, because there's a certain sameness to origin stories of companies. There's usually two characteristics. There's sort of a very farsightful founder, and there's some industry he or she wants to disrupt. That's pretty much the start and end of most of those stories. But open source projects are like kids that grew up in orphanages or foster homes and had to fight their way out. I mean, these are often projects that shouldn't even have come into being except for some sort of happenstance. And so the stories are much more interesting. I mean, you have stories of reclaimed beauty, where a large company does something, they don't know what to do with it, and then a team like Matrix forms and takes it and makes it into something beautiful. And stories of, warrior bands of developers following a project from company to company like Jitsi. Almost, something out of Homer's The Odyssey or something like that. And then you've got stories where a project never should have happened, but some kind of train wreck, happened. And everybody loves a train wreck. Train wrecks are very interesting. So in the train wreck subgenre of open source origin stories, I present the jambonz story. So it was 2009, and I had just quit the company that I'd founded 10 years earlier, and I was furious. Now, a little bit of background. I'd founded this company to sell software platforms to telecom carriers who were busy switching the core of their networks from circuit switched to packet switched. And until recently, things had been going pretty well. We had backing from 3 different VCs. We had about 45 employees, and we were getting deployments in a lot of the largest carriers in the world. And I was having a great time. I was flying around the world, making stuff work, crawling through networks, meeting sales teams and stuff like that. But then the financial collapse of 2008 happened, and just like a water spigot being shut off, our customers stopped paying their bills. So we did what you have to do in that kind of situation: tighten your belt and see if you can just muddle through to the other side of this desert. We did a massive layoff. We had to let a lot of people go, down to a skeleton team. It was kind of a horrible time, but we cut costs so severely that we started being cash flow positive again. It looked like we would make it to the other side. But we had one bank that had their own liquidity problem. And they called a loan that they had with us. Even though we'd made all the interest payments, we hadn't missed any interest or principal payments, they called the loan. They saw we had about enough cash in our bank account to pay their loan. They just wanted to increase their cash reserves, so they called us. So they sent us into kind of a death spiral. And we then had to look for an acquirer, and wasn't a great time to sell a company, but we found someone who was going to acquire the assets, and it was going to give us enough money to pay off the creditors, take care of employee obligations. So it wasn't great, but under the circumstances, somewhat of a soft landing. Then the board had signed off on it. I'd signed off on it kind of reluctantly, but 3 days before we were supposed to actually sign, I managed to get a rather large sales deal that gave us an influx of cash. We could pay off the bank, and we could keep going. So happy days. There was only one problem. It had been 10 years. So after 10 years and 3 rounds of funding, the common stock of the company was basically worthless. So I went to the VCs, and I said, 2 things. A, we just saved the company, and B, we need to recapitalize. To me, it was a no-brainer, because we just run an exercise that validated the value of the company was 0. So if I was going to work another 10 years to make it worth something, I wanted to own a piece of it, and I wanted the same for the management and the employees. But they didn't agree. They sort of liked things the way they were. Hence, I was furious. I was livid, and I quit on the spot. I wasn't going to work with people like that. And I can remember as clear as the day, my last day, walking out to the parking lot, and I had this Harley motorcycle at the time, which, as you know, is super loud. And I remember I just wanted to get on that thing and rev it up so loud I could bring the whole building crumbling down around me. I was that pissed. And so I fire it up, and I peel out of the parking lot, and there's only one problem. I'm actually a really safe motorcycle driver. I don't know how to drive recklessly in a safe way, if that's even a thing. So I almost clip this tree going out and kill myself, which would have been a quick end to the story. I missed it, but I didn't have a job. I didn't have prospects for a job, really. I didn't have anything waiting in the wings. I had a non-compete that said potentially I couldn't even work in this industry. My stock was worthless. And on top of all that, I had debts of about $60,000 because I'd taken out personal loans to buy more now worthless stock back when I thought this was going to be the next big thing. So this was kind of a sobering reality. Wasn't sure what to do at the time. And it wasn't that day, but soon thereafter in that neighborhood that my wife chimed in and said she would like a divorce. She would like if we got divorced. So the technical term for this, I think, is double whammy. The double whammy is to be avoided, let me tell you. But all of that anger-fueled energy that I had was sort of gone. I was deflated. I felt like a complete loser. And I was a little bit lost and alone. I mean, a lot of stuff that I cared about, I'd lost or I saw receding from me. And what I didn't realize at the time, and I couldn't at the time, was that life was giving me a gift. It was giving me a gift of a blank sheet of paper. And it's rare in the middle of your life to get a blank sheet of paper. I mean, usually, your life's work, such as it is largely defined. Who you are is pretty much set. That paper you're holding is filled out. You might scribble in the margins a little bit. You might do some light revising of sections. But blank sheets of paper are for the very young, and as I learned, for people who have failed cataclysmically. But I couldn't see that. I just had to put one foot in front of the other. So while I was working to get the non-compete cleared up, I took some really odd jobs doing website development. And if I'm honest, building websites for an hourly wage wasn't something I had pictured myself doing at age 45. But there I was, and I need to support my family. And I enjoyed development. Always did, and still did. So I was doing website development, and I really kind of enjoyed it. And I started learning things like Node.js and middleware patterns, and then I was thinking, well, this is really awesome, the way these guys are building apps. Can't we bring some of this ease of use to the voice world? When we're in the voice world, it had always been sort of the purview of domain-specific programming languages and very arcane and obtuse configuration file syntax. And that was how Dractio was born. I wanted to bring some of that sort of Node.js goodness and application flavors to the voice world, but more importantly, bring web application developers and let them build voice applications without having to go down that rabbit hole that probably most of us have been down that can take a year or two to get up to speed. So that was Dractio, and for the next couple of years, I had a nice little consulting business doing one-off custom projects for people. In the back of my head, I was still angry, and I was still thinking, yeah, this is an in-between thing. I'm bridging. I'm gonna do this other big thing at some point. But I had this little business going, and then about 3 years ago, I did a series of custom projects for people who wanted to get off Twilio, or they wanted to get off Rescom, or they wanted to get off Plevo. They wanted to get off some kind of commercial CPaaS, and I built them point solutions to do it. But after I'd done about 3 of them, I thought, well, I feel like I've kind of gone maybe 60 or 70% of the way of doing the whole thing, a general purpose CPaaS. And I got intrigued by that idea. I don't consider myself a great developer, but I would say I have a strange set of skills, and I bet I could say the same of a lot of people in this room. I mean, we can't really do the Liam Neeson thing and say we have a very specific set of skills, but we have a weird set of skills, is maybe the best we can say. But I just happen to have some skills that seem to line up with this task, and this task seemed to be kind of fun, seemed to be a David and Goliath thing, where like, oh, could one person really build a CPaaS? So the next customer that came along that had the same deal, they wanted to get off Rescom, I said, well, how'd you feel about doing this in open source? And to their credit, they said, yeah. So we structured a project, and that was how jambonz was born. That was about 3 years ago, and it's kind of just moved on from there. It's initially found a home for sort of small and medium voice-centric communication service providers. More recently, in the conversational AI space, companies want to connect AI assets to a variety of channels. Voice is just a channel. They don't have a lot of voice experience. It's great to have something like jambonz they can plug in, and that's been good. And that brings me to this year. This year, really probably around the time I was thinking about coming to ComCon, this immersive kind of community event, I realized a couple things. I realized, first of all, I didn't do it on my own. I had great community all the way along. This never would have happened without the first customer, this wonderful customer who really probably would have preferred a proprietary product that he owned, said, okay, yeah, we're going to pay you, but we're going to let it be open source. This year I was able to expand the team only because I had another wonderful customer who said, hey, Dave, we really like your open source projects, but we want to know it's going to be viable in the future. We think your team should expand. We will fund a position for you to do that. So really just amazing support as I paused to look back on it. And then I realized every single interaction and relation that I've had with anybody related to any of this work, whether it be customer or someone who's using it, who's, there's no relationship between partners, developers, they've all been uniformly positive. I always feel like we're all on the same side of the table, looking at a problem in the same way, trying to solve it. Very different than how I felt in my old company, where I felt like I was across the table from VCs in this toxic zero-sum negotiating game. And finally I realized it was time to let go of the anger and time to realize that jambonz, which is this thing I created on a small piece of that blank sheet of paper, is really what I'm meant to be doing, what I want to be doing. I just want to thank all of you who've been part of it or maybe a part of it in the future, because it's been wonderful. And I wake up a lot of days and just think I'm the luckiest guy in the world. So anyways, that's the story of jambonz. And let's see how our little instance is doing. Okay, so it's come up, it's complete. If I go to the output screens, we got one last thing we need to do. This, again, I wanted it to come up under a DNS name. So I need to create a DNS record, which I'm probably going to need to log back in here. I use DNS Made Easy, so I'm just going to create a few DNS records for that IP. Not just for jambonz.cloud, which is the IP I'm using. I'll also add one for api.jambonz.cloud, grafana.jambonz.cloud, and sip.jambonz.cloud. Okay, those may take a second to propagate, but we'll see. So in the outputs, we've got the IP address. There's an initial password to the portal, which is actually just the instance ID, which we'll be forced to change. I don't see if this thing is up yet. Okay, so the portal's up, and so I'm just going to log in for the first time, and I use that first-time password, and then it's going to prompt me to put in a new password. Okay, and this is the jambonz portal. I'll do a quick spin in a second, but the first thing that you would want to do is add some speech and some characters. So jambonz is what I call a bring your own everything CPaaS. So we're not reselling anybody's speech. We're not providing any SIP trunks. You plug those in. So if I go to speech, I've got a pretty large set of speech vendors that we can add. And we're always adding more. And then there's a custom API. You can even add your own. I'm just going to add Google to keep things simple. I can choose to use it for both. I'll do both speech to text and text to speech. I'll put in a key. So I've got Google set up, and it went off and checked and tells me the status. Okay, I got a SIP trunk. I'm going to add a SIP trunk just so we can make some calls and so forth. Adding a SIP trunk is pretty straightforward. You're just adding the IP addresses and some of the other stuff, like are we going to do outbound authentication and so forth. I've got some predefined carriers. I'm just going to use Twilio for right now, so we'll add Twilio. But I don't care to do outbound authentication, and I put in all the Twilio gateways, so that's good. And my outbound Twilio URL will be jambonz cloud. Yeah, I don't need to do it, but it does, like the database insert actually will check, and that kind of weird bracket I put as a placeholder would barf. So yeah, I mean, I could just as well delete it. It doesn't really matter. So now I need to go to Twilio and just set things up on there. So helpful reminder here, have your carriers whitelist the signaling IP so I can grab them there and do this one last thing, go over to Twilio. And let's go to originate, add an origination, get rid of that. And we should be good to go. And I have a phone number on Twilio, which is this UK number. And so finally, I'll go back and in jambonz, we have a SIP trunk, and then we can add phone numbers, and we can route phone numbers to applications. And in this case, that's the phone number. This system comes up with some default applications. So just to test it out, I'll use the Hello World application. So basically, we should be good now. So that's sort of a jambonz self-hosted system up and running. And hopefully you can see it's not too much work.
Hi there, and welcome to jambonz.
I can't really tell if you can hear that or not, but it's just sort of a Hello World kind of application.
This is an example of simple text-to-speech, but there is so much more you can do. Try us out.
Okay, so we can tell our system is up and running. Just a few words on this portal. It's a multi-tenant system, and there's a concept. Each tenant in the jambonz system is called a service provider. So it comes sort of with one default service provider, and then under service providers you have accounts. So if you were running a jambonz system and you wanted to bring on resellers, and they had their own customers, in the jambonz lingo, they would be service providers. So we could add a new service provider if we want, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then under service provider, you have accounts. It comes with one default account. I can add more accounts, but again, I'm not going to do that right now. And there's users as well. So you can create a user at the account level. You can create a user at the service provider level or at the admin level. Okay, we'll come back to that shortly. I want to switch and just show you one of my slides, kind of high-level architecture. Let's see. So, oops, let me go back to the other one. Where was it? Here. Okay. So yeah, really high level, but this is what's running on that server. There's a session border controller type of functionality, and then there's a feature server kind of functionality. Jambonz is built with a lot of great open source products, and I've tried to list them up here. It's one reason why a fairly complex system like this could be built pretty quickly, because we have so much great open source that we can assemble. We're not really building things from scratch. So in the SBC, for the signaling part, I use Dractio as the SIP engine. I use API ban, of course, which is a great product that hopefully we're all using and supporting, Fred Posner's. And then RTP, I use RTP engine, which is a product I just love. So thank you, Andreas, for that. And at that level, we're handling things like registrations, determining whether this is a call we want to accept, does it map to an account, and so forth. And then we're letting things into the network, which could be in a private network where we have the feature servers. And those are using, again, Dractio for some signaling, FreeSwitch for the media control. FreeSwitch is a great project, obviously, that I've been using for the last 10 years. And then all the application logic is in Node.js. There's a provisioning database. All those accounts and service providers live in a MySQL database. Pretty small database, and it doesn't grow. We don't keep CDRs there or anything like that. There's a Redis key value cache for things that we cache, which are a lot of things that we cache. And then there's sort of a monitoring stack, which includes Telegraph, InfluxDB, Homer, another great project, Grafana, and then Jaeger. So the way, sorry, did someone say something? Oh, okay, that was me. Sorry. And the way things work is calls come into the system, they make their way to a feature server, and then the application logic is delegated to the third party, to the customer. We either make a webhook request and return a payload, and this is obviously very standard in the CPaaS world, and people are used to that with TWIML and the like. It's JSON instead of XML, but same deal. Or you can make REST API calls, or you can opt for a WebSocket connection where a call comes in, you get a nailed-up connection, and then you can send and receive commands a little more asynchronously. Okay, so that's the basic architecture. And now I want to show how to build applications a little bit. I'll do kind of a WebSocket and and webhook and WebSockets. So to build WebSockets, you've got two choices, Node.js or Node-RED. So there's an npx create jambonz app that you can run, and if you run it, it will tell you what some of the options are. But basically, you can generate some scenarios. So I can say I want to do a scenario with TTS and maybe a dial. And we won't run this particular app, but I just want to show it to you to give you a sense of what you get, the kind of code that's scaffolded out. Okay, so actually before I do that, quick over here. If I go here to the documentation page, go under webhooks, this is where you'll see all of the sort of verbs, let's say, that are supported. So, if we want to say something, you've got all the kind of typical stuff, and they're documented here. Back in the application, I've got the high level is a very boilerplate kind of webhook application. So there's really nothing you would change here. But then you have endpoints handlers. So like a very simple hello world app just looks like this. We've received something. If you're familiar with Express, this is all very familiar. But create a new webhook response, and then you can call any of those verbs that were documented on the web page. So here we're just going to pause. Then we're going to say some text. And that's that. So webhooks are very simple. It's really just a matter of getting a little familiar with the verbs that are on the website, and then just using that and putting things together. Let's look at a different example with Node-RED. So in Node-RED, thanks in great part to Sam, there's a jambonz package. And so if you like doing things in Flow Editor, you can use this. And then it's just added a bunch of, there we go, a bunch of nodes to the palette. Again, you see you've got all of the same kind of verbs, like say. So there'd be, in this case, if we were doing here, we would do a webhook in. We could do say, collect, whatever, and webhook out. Oh, sorry, two ends. Yeah, that's not good. And again, it would just be a matter of saying, whatever the path is, and then we're going to say something. We can choose the vendor, or just use the application default, and so forth and so on. Oops, yeah, I didn't really like that. Let's see. Let me just import a flow that we can look at that does a little bit more. Let's see, select a file. New flow. Here's a very simple flow. It's just going to collect something and then echo it back. So again, you can see it starts with an echo, and we're going to say something. We're going to gather it. In the gather command, we're just going to say that we have an action hook we want to send it back to, and then when we get the transcript, we can look to see, did we get speech detected or not? If we got speech detected, then we can transcribe, or we can parse out what exactly was said in the confidence, and we'll play that back. So let's say that one we will run. What we would do is go back to jambonz and create a new application. We'll just call it Echo. And in this case, it's that's the node red, and I think it's just Echo. And we can specify the different language or voice or whatnot. I'll just go whatever, the WaveNet C. We've got an application. Something else we can do that is new is we can enable call recording. And this is a new feature. So in jambonz initially, one of the values of it being open source and being self-hosted was privacy. So we tried not to keep anything very private information if we could. So we have, initially we didn't do any recording on the platform. We support SIPREC, so you could send calls to a SIPREC server for recording. We support sort of an audio socket where we could stream, but we didn't give you a chance to really record the audio because we didn't, we really didn't want third-party audio recording on a jambonz platform. We've added this feature, and I like the way it works because the customer at the account can specify his own recording storage. So in this case, S3. So if I'm running a jambonz system, my customer, who I could give a login to at the customer level, can specify his bucket, his S3 bucket, and his credentials, and this recording would be accessible to him, but it would never stay on the jambonz system. It would be gone to him in X3. So I'm going to do that now, but I kind of don't want to show my credentials. So can you guys just briefly cut the feed here so I can copy in a key without it being in the... Yeah, I know. You wouldn't be able to do much with this key because it's really just gives you, permissions are pretty limited to uploading to S3, but 1 second and we'll be back. Okay, you can come, you can bring it back. Oh, there you are. So yeah, and you can associate tags, and let me test to make sure that it works, so the credential. You can record all the calls for the account, but you might not want to. You may want to, only have certain applications that you want to record, or you may only want to record during tune-up and testing with a customer, but it's pretty helpful to be able to do that. So let me just make sure that's all set. Yeah? This right now is only for the whole duration of the call. Yeah. Oops. Enable call recording, record all calls. Okay, sorry. So back to, we had this, and I think that was ready to go, and let's just change the phone number to that so I can make a call to it. Echo. Let's see if we can get to that call.
There, and welcome to ComCon. Please say something and I will echo it back to you.
Yeah, what time is dinner tomorrow?
You said what time is dinner tomorrow with a confidence score of 0.89. Please say something and I will echo it back to you.
Should I wear my fancy dress?
You said, should I wear my fancy dress with a confidence score of 0.99? Please.
Okay. Anyways, so that's us executing the Node-RED application. We can wait for this call. It'll take a second for this last call to come in, and then I just want to show a few things about observability. So that call came in. So we have the details on the call. Now we have the recording, so we can play the recording out of here if we want. Oh wait, yeah, sorry. Don't worry, we can't hear it from here. I understand, I don't think, anyways. So we've got the recording, but what's kind of really cool is we can overlay the times where we were doing ASR, and we can see exactly what was returned. So I can listen to that, and I can hear, and I can see, as well as hear what was returned, and I can see the confidence score. So that's really good for when you're testing out speech vendors. Maybe you want to see which ones are working, or someone's complaining. This particular prompt, when we hit it, we're not getting very good recognition. You can go and kind of listen to it, but not only listen to it, you can see what it returned. The other thing that we have is open telemetry. So we added open telemetry tracing. It's important to be able to monitor the system, sort of writ large, but also if someone calls in and they had a problem on their call, we want to be able to see, what is going on that call specifically. So we have open telemetry tracing. We kind of see everything that went on in this call. So when this call come in, we had to do a database lookup to look up their account details, and we saw, no problem there. It took 10 milliseconds to do that. We hit the database again. That was 5 milliseconds. We had to go off and hit some third-party webhook. Sometimes the third party could be the problem, and we want to know that. We can see that took 200 milliseconds, so that's okay. And so on and so on. We can see really a lot of things that are going on. So we can see text-to-speech generation. We can see we used Google to do it. It wasn't cached, and Google took 113 seconds to return us the information. So very useful for troubleshooting at the individual call level. And while we're talking about troubleshooting, I will just bring up Grafana. So this would have spun up a Grafana dashboard as well. And Grafana has a default admin, and then I changed that as well. And then I try to find the dashboards. So basic Grafana dashboard, and we can see how many calls are on the system, how many calls are hitting the system. We can see a lot of good stuff like MySQL response time. So, again, the individual calls to MySQL. We're sending commands to RTP engine over the NG protocol. We can see how long that's taking. Obviously, no problem there. Those are milliseconds. The webhook response time, text-to-speech response time, how often we're hitting TTS. We cache the TTS when we get it. So if you ask for the same prompt, same vendor, same language, we're not going to waste your money going to get it again. Keep track of how many channels and so forth, and then, of course, all of the different statistics. So, and then, of course, we can alert based on this as well. Okay. I will give you a quick example of how to write a WebSocket application. The best way is, again, just to use npx create jambonz WS app instead of W app, and it will create a WebSocket application for you. So let's just say, let's see we did that echo app in Node.js instead of Node-RED. We could just build it this way. And again, we'll take a quick look at the code. So again, the main file is just boilerplate that you would never need to change, and then you've got some endpoints. It basically look like this. So in this case, it's a little bit different in terms of structure, but you get an event. When we have a new WebSocket connection, you get all the information that came over, all the SIP headers, the whole SIP invite and everything in there is there. And then you have handlers on that event having to do with the WebSocket. But again, it's back down to doing things like this, where you're just chaining these commands on an object to say, I want to gather, I want to do a nested say. The input is speech. We can be speech or DTMF. When you get something, call /echo. You call /echo, you're going to come back down here, and we're going to do stuff with it. So it's pretty straightforward code is all I'm really trying to convince you of here. Let's see. Okay. what I wanted to show you next was third-party integration. So, in Cognigy, I'm going to try to demo their stuff. They're here, so I'm going to embarrass myself because I probably don't know it as well as them. But they've done kind of some pretty amazing stuff. So Cognigy, if you don't know them, they have really one of the leading conversational AI platforms, and they're getting a lot of uptake. And it's got a great sort of low-code editor, and I don't know, I feel like I know a lot about low-code editors because I've built a lot of service creation environments in the past, and I have to say this is one of the best ones. This is a simple, kind of demo bot for like a healthcare provider where someone's going to dial in and identify themselves, state a problem, and they're going to get connected to someone, they're going to get a call back or something. So, it's a really simple environment where you can just add all sorts of nodes. There's interfaces to all sorts of third parties like Salesforce and so on. And it's multi-channel, so there are multiple channels. There's sort of this AI channel, but there's a voice gateway channel where we can use SSML. So of course, SSML is only going to make sense over the voice gateway channel. And there's all sorts of other channels. So you can build a bot and deploy it on all these other channels. But if you deploy it on the voice channel, that's actually using jambonz behind the scenes. And the reason they chose jambonz, I think, is that the open source gives them an opportunity. This is probably the main reason why people pick jambonz specifically, and a lot of times open source in general was it gives you a chance to drive innovation into the product if you need to. So if you're doing voice, and voice needs to be innovative, you're not okay with just basic voice, then you want some control over the product, you want some control over the roadmap, and open source really offers that to you. So you build these flows, and then right in their environment, you can test them. They have a simple chat editor. So in this one, it's basically just saying if it's a medical emergency, hang up. Are you the patient we're going to be assisting today? Blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through it there, but we can test it. We'll test it through the voice as well. When it comes time to deploy, we go to deploy endpoint voice gateway, and so we have a WebSocket endpoint. So this is just using the WebSocket interface that I just talked about. So it's just a third party using the WebSocket interface. So I ought to be able to go over here and create a new application, which will just say Cognigy Flow, and just type in that exact WebSocket. So it's just a WSS URL. Again, I have my choices of voices down here. If I then, let's go switch the phone number to that one so we can test it.
Thank you for choosing Aztec Healthcare. If this is a medical emergency, please hang up and dial 911. Are you the patient we will be assisting today?
Yeah.
I'll need your date of birth, including the month, day, and year. For example, March 2nd, 1973.
September 22nd, 1965.
What is the best number to call you back?
Okay, I'm going to hang up at that point. But you can see I'm able to test it right through here, and it's going through jambonz. And, the SDT is Google, and you can tell it's super quick, which is nice. Another neat thing you can do that they built in, and by the way, when they do that, they're actually going off and provisioning a whole new account on jambonz just for this call, spinning things up and then cleaning up afterwards. So they're using the APIs to really integrate at a tight level. The other thing I think is a really neat feature, I mean, as a voice person, the whole thing is neat because we're building something in development and there's no lift and put it in production. I think we've all been through, you test, and then at 3 a.m. in the morning, it goes into production, and then you see, this is kind of seamless. We're building it, and it's in production right away. The live follow feature is pretty cool. So if I call from my phone, and I put in my phone number, +1 508 308 4809. So I say that I want to follow that. Ooh, sorry.
Thank you for choosing Aztec Healthcare. If this is a medical emergency, please hang up and dial 911. Are you the patient we will be assisting today?
Yes.
I'll need your date of birth, including the month, day, and year. For example, March 2nd, 1973.
September 22nd, 1965.
Great. Is 508-308-4809 the best number to contact you?
Yeah.
Great. I'm here to guide you in getting the help you need for any concerns or questions related to your medical equipment. How can I help you today?
Yeah, my CPAP machine is blinking. It's got a red light going off, and I'm not sure if I need to power cycle it or you need to send someone out here.
To help you with your CPAPs, I'll need to transfer you to an agent.
Okay, so that's, again, just an example, but, you know, with this integration, they were able to create really innovative features like that. And then over on the jambonz side, we have the calls and the recordings and so forth, and we can kind of troubleshoot what's going on with those. Let's see. That's actually about what I was going to cover. Back here to my slides. Yeah, I think that was it. So.
Thank you. And there is time, just a few minutes, for any questions that you might have ahead of going into this rather luxurious tea that's coming next. So does anybody have a question for Dave? Hands up. Yes, it's Sam, our first customer, and a mic is going to appear behind you, Sam.
So the WebSockets, as opposed to webhooks, what's the advantages, disadvantages?
I feel the main advantage of the WebSocket, a lot of times if you're doing asynchronous stuff, like you're going to have WebSockets, but then you're going to have to launch a REST API call in the middle. Like if you had a timer on a call, there's no WebSocket that tells you, hey, you're 30 seconds from the end of this guy's budget or something. So if you're doing asynchronous stuff of any kind, the WebSocket is kind of nice because you don't have to, you can do it with webhooks, but it's webhooks plus the REST API, and the WebSocket, you already have the connection. It's great.
I reckon Sam thinks his question was answered well there, with confidence you would. Any more questions for Dave Horton, author of primary contributor to Dragstio and jambonz? In that case, I would like to thank Dave a lot for being very, very open and real with us. Great to hear his story. And so let's give him a very, very big ComCon thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And of course, he's here for the rest of the show, so if you want to talk to him, you can. That is it for the sessions today, because as you know, we're going into the tea break, and then at 4:30, we're going to go on the super secret road trip. So just remember to come back for tomorrow. All the best.